All right, it is 5:30 here, so I think we can go ahead and get started. I think we will have some more folks probably slowly trickling in. Just a couple of quick housekeeping things. Elaine and I are sitting in the same room currently. We are sitting across from each other. So if anything is weird with the audio at any point, please drop something in the chat, let us know, and we'll see what we can do to fix that. Feel free to kind of interact with each other in the chat, but if you have questions for us, please put them in the Q&A. So you can find both the Q&A and the chat features in the bar along the bottom of your Zoom screen. So we'll be monitoring that Q&A throughout the webinar to try and answer any questions that come up as we go through things. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here.
We don't really have it. Maybe we should introduce ourselves too.
Yes. All right, so thank you all for joining us for our NestQuest training tonight. My name is Elise Bernstein. I am a researcher and outreach coordinator with the University of Minnesota Bee Squad. Bee Squad is the outreach and education team here at the University of Minnesota Bee Lab. So I do a lot of public engagement and outreach work, as well as bumblebee research in the lab. I'll let Elaine introduce herself as well.
Hello, everyone. I'm hoping you can hear me on well enough on Elise's microphone, which is across from me. I am an extension educator and researcher here at the University of Minnesota, where I focus on pollinator conservation and education. And I love to do projects with public participation, getting people to help us learn more about pollinators.
Awesome. So kind of just starting with sort of a general overview of what you can expect for today. We're going to start off with a little kind of introduction to bumblebee ecology. We'll talk a little bit about the bumblebee life cycle, and then we'll shift gears to talk about why bumblebee nests are so important and why that's really the focus of this research project. We'll talk a little bit about previous research that's been done to learn more about bumblebee nesting, as well as how to look for the nests, how you'll be looking for nests as part of NestQuest. We'll tell you a little bit about what we found in 2024. So 2024 was the first year of this project. This is our second year right now. So we'll talk a little bit about what we know already. Then we'll take a short break. And then when we come back from our break, we'll talk a little bit about using Survey 123 and how you'll record your data from your NestQuests. We will touch just briefly on field safety because that's super important when you're out looking for nests. And then we will give you a little sneak peek at the radio tracking that our staff team is going to be doing this summer to hopefully locate some bumblebee nests. So this is going to be just a super brief overview of bumblebee ecology and conservation. If anybody is interested in a 2-hour webinar that goes a little bit more in depth on bumblebee ecology and conservation, we participated in a webinar with the Xerces Society. So Elaine and I partner with Xerces for another project that we work on called the Bumblebee Atlas. And we worked with them to do a super in-depth presentation on bumblebee ecology. So if you want to learn more, there's the QR code on the screen, and Elaine can put the link in the chat as well for you all to take a look at if you want to learn more. So pollinators are a keystone species. So this means that, lots of other life in any ecosystem is really dependent on pollinators. More than 85% of all flowering plants require help from an animal, usually an insect, for pollination. So pollinators, like our bumblebees, are super, super critical in all ecosystems. Well, there are lots of different pollinators out there on the landscape. Bees are our most effective pollinator. So they consume nectar and pollen as both larvae and adults. They collect and transport pollen. So when they are visiting flowers, they are intentionally collecting pollen to bring back to their nests to feed to their babies. as well as consuming nectar. But in that process, they're moving pollen around and helping to pollinate flowers. Bees also exhibit something called flower constancy. So this is a pattern where they will visit the same type of flower when they're out on a foraging trip. Bees have to learn how to access the resources, the pollen and nectar provided to them within flowers. So when they are, out foraging, they will stay on the same flower. So they only have to learn how to access those resources once per trip while they're out there foraging. There's lots of different bees out there on the landscape in Minnesota. There's over 500 species that have been documented within our states, but we are focusing on bumblebees for a couple of key reasons. So they are relatively large. So that photo on the left there shows our largest bee in Minnesota compared to one of the smallest bees in Minnesota. So their large size makes them a lot easier to find. They are easier to photograph, so bumblebees can be ID'd to the species level just from photographs. And for that reason, that makes them a little bit easier to identify than a lot of our other bees that we have in Minnesota and across the US. So bumblebees have three key needs. So they need overwintering habitat. So this is the places that the queens are spending the winter time. They dig themselves a few inches into the soil and they'll spend the winter there. They also need foraging habitat. So this is the plants where they're able to get pollen and nectar from. Thanks to so many years of bumblebee research, we have a pretty good understanding of what flowers bumblebees need or what they might be preferring or visiting when they're out there on the landscape. And we have a pretty good understanding, of that they need flowers in order to survive. And their third primary need is nesting habitat. So they need a place to live. And that is really the focus of this project because there are a lot of gaps in knowledge when it comes to where bumblebees nest, if there are areas where they prefer to nest or will decide not to nest. And that's what we're hoping that you all can help us learn through this project. So in the spring, a bumblebee nest is established by a queen. So that's the queen that was overwintering just a few inches in the soil. She'll fly in sort of these zigzag patterns. You can see where that yellow line is the pattern that she will take as she's searching for a place to nest. You'll often notice this kind of early in the spring. Different species of bumblebees emerge at different times. So some of them come out really early, some of them don't come out till a little bit later. But when you see this sort of zigzag flying around, often close to the ground, sometimes they stop to explore a hole here or a hole there. What you're seeing there is that queen really searching for a place to establish a nest. So this is kind of what she might look like if she stops to explore, looking at areas where maybe there's a hole or maybe some leaf litter or something like that on the ground. So different species of bumblebees nest in different places based on what we know so far. Granted, there's still a lot we don't yet understand about bumblebee nesting. Some species have been documented to nest just on the surface of the ground. Some species of bumblebees seem to prefer to nest underground, but they're all nesting in places that have some sort of pre-existing insulation. So very often these are abandoned rodent dens. Rodents do a lot of work to build these nest sites. So sometimes underground they'll have lots of sort of midden and things that they string together to create that pre-existing insulation. Sometimes the nests on the surface are lots of piles of grass and things like that. Sometimes in urban areas, you'll find bumblebees nesting in a cushion on your patio furniture or in an abandoned birdhouse. Lots of those types of places that already have some sort of pre-existing insulation. And while we do have some understanding of where bumblebees have been documented to nest, there's still a lot that we don't know. Let's see if this video will play here. So this is what the inside of that bumblebee nest might look like. So there's some sort of midden-like material in there. You can see the little wax pupa, as well as some workers and the queen kind of crawling around. So within the bumblebee nest, there is a division of labor. So bumblebees are social insects, meaning they live in these large colonies. The queens are the reproductive females, so they are the ones that are responsible for laying all of the eggs that develop into workers and males. In the spring, you'll see them out foraging and finding a place to nest. But once that nest has been established and they've laid some eggs that develop into workers, the queen's primary responsibilities are within the nest, to be sort of the main reproductive force within that nest. She will produce lots of different workers that have different responsibilities within the nest. Larger workers sometimes have the foraging responsibility, so they're the ones that are going out, gathering pollen and nectar. The smaller workers are sometimes doing tasks within the colony, so sort of any maintenance that needs to happen within there. And then the drones are the reproductive males. So the males are produced at the end of the season. Their biggest responsibility is to leave the nest and mate with another queen coming out of another nest. And typically once they leave their nest, they will never return. So with that, it's important that we touch on the bumblebee life cycle. So we are kind of in this early summer phase right now. So there are many queens out there that we saw in the early spring that emerged from their overwintering sites, and we're doing that zigzag flying around, trying to find a place to start a nest. Many of them have already located nesting sites and have done a little bit of foraging and started building up their nests and have begun to lay eggs that will develop into workers. So within the next few weeks, we are probably going to start seeing more workers out on the landscape. The two-spotted bumblebee is one that emerges earlier, and their colonies kind of peak in size earlier in the summer. So we've already started seeing some two-spotted bumblebee workers out there foraging on flowers, but colonies are really kind of still getting started at this time of year. As we move into the late summer, those colonies will continue to grow in size. Different species of bumblebees have different size colonies. The black and gold bumblebee typically has smaller colonies, where the common eastern bumblebee can have really large colonies of up to 1,000 workers. So they'll continue to grow in size throughout the summer, and those workers are the ones that you're going to see out foraging for pollen and nectar on flowers. As we move into the late summer or early fall, that queen is going to start laying eggs that will develop into males as well as new queens. Those males and new queens will leave the nest to mate with other males and new queens from other nests. And that maternal colony that they came from, those bees will all die. They will not survive the winter. It's just those new queens that are produced at the end of the season that will find an overwintering site, dig themselves a few inches into the soil, and spend the winter there. The queens have a sort of antifreeze in their blood that allows them to survive our harsh cold temperatures over the winter time. And then they'll stay there until the following spring, when they sort of start that process all over again. And I am going to stop sharing here and hand things over to Elaine to talk a little bit more about our project and protocols.
All right. I'll think for a second. All right, and I'm on the very much wrong slide. Sorry about that. Close your eyes. Spoilers. I just wanted to touch on this information that that Elise was just sharing about the life cycle, and just point out an important thing that we're thinking about for this life cycle is when we're looking for nests, we want to focus on those times after the queen has already had workers come out. So this is why we're kind of doing this training now when we're just starting to see workers, because we're really going to get rolling with looking for nests more in a couple weeks after these colonies have built up, after they already were, when we're in the kind of early summer into the late summer. That's when there's more bumblebees in all the colonies, and it's going to be easier for us to find them. So I want to go over some of our thoughts behind this study design, and how some background on how people go about finding nests. So we know that bumblebees are of conservation concern. A lot of them, about 1 out of 3 bumblebee species are of conservation concern, are in a threatened or near threatened category. And so getting to fill in that gap in knowledge about their nesting habitat is really critical. While we have this general knowledge of bumblebee nesting, we don't know about specifics for many species. And when there are species that are of conservation concern, we want to have as much information as we can to really make sure that we're providing habitat for them. There have been people doing this, looking for nests in a few different ways. So I'll talk about a few of these. People have been mapping flight patterns, radio tracking, using detection dogs, and doing these transect visual surveys. So some earlier research back in the 60s, there was a researcher, Morgan Webb, who was working in Nebraska, and he was able to discover and describe several hundred nests when he was doing his research. And what he did was he had a map, and he would look for bees that were kind of done foraging and flying off in a particular direction. And he'd mark the line of their travel on the map, and then look at where all these points intersected. And then he would go there and look for the nest. So this worked really well for him. It's been really difficult for other people to do. And it is a lot of work. You have to spend, a lot of days out there in a limited site to be able to connect up and find where those nests are. But here's an example of an area where he was working, and all those stars or all these nests that he discovered from this method of mapping. People have also used research dogs. So here at the Bee Lab here at the University of Minnesota, we have worked with some organizations that do this. So we've shared nesting materials with them to help train their dogs. So they have been able to train dogs to detect different species of bumblebees, to differentiate between different species when they're training them. So different bumblebee species do smell different. This has been something that has worked in some habitats better than others. When the habitat is really complex, like in wooded areas, it can take the dogs a really long time to differentiate between all the different things that are happening there. So this is something that people are, have been doing for a while. People are working on trying to improve still. There is some hope for this working, but it does, it's a lot of fun to get see these cute dogs doing what they're doing, and can be a really enriching experience for them too. There's dogs that love doing this. So that is something that that people are exploring more, and we'll see if we're kind of waiting to see if it becomes something that's really practical. People have also used radio telemetry. So in general, kind of larger bumblebees are able to carry tags. This technology is getting better all the time, so they're making smaller and smaller tags. There is some newer tech where instead of having to carry a battery to power the transmitter, they're able to use a teeny tiny little solar panel. And the idea here is that then you can put the tags on these bees and follow them back to the nest. So this is something that people have been doing again pretty recently, just in the last few years. And then another way that people have been finding nests is by doing these visual surveys. A couple of researchers, Genevieve Pujasek and Sammy Dolan. Sammy did her surveys here in Minnesota, whereas Jenny was doing hers in Massachusetts. But this is going to be similar to what you're doing. So going out and just walking and looking for nests, and we'll talk more about what that means as we go over the protocols. So there is, the kind of the next step built on that is to do those visual surveys with volunteer engagement. And so this was done before by researchers in the UK that involved volunteers, and they had 719 volunteers that were distributed throughout the UK, and they found over 1,400 nests. So, going back to what other people found, there's like you find 100 nests, maybe you find 30 nests. But with all these volunteers, they were able to really drastically increase the number of nests that they were able to find and describe. And this is something that really helps us to hone in on these habitat associations if we have a lot of nests that people find. So globally, people have done some research. There's this really nice review paper that was looking at where bees nest and overwinter, just looking at previous research, what has been done before, and they looked at all these different kinds of habitats that people had researched. Researched bumblebee nesting, found a lot of bees in agricultural areas, in forests, and in grasslands. So looking at this research that was done in Minnesota, so Sammy Dolan, who also helps us out on NestQuest, so you may see her at some of our future events. She was doing research looking in forests, prairies, and forest edges, and spent an hour out there each time she went out in a 1,500 meter square plot, and spent 168 hours looking in each habitat, and found 25 nests. 24 of them were in prairie and edge habitat. So there was only a single nest that was found in forests. So how do people find nests? So we talked about these detection dogs. People also will use genetic analysis to not really find nests, but researchers can do some molecular work to look at the relationship of bumblebees to each other to estimate just how many nests are out there in the environment. But for finding nests, these transect visual surveys are really a nice way to go for finding nests and having not a lot of resources that are needed. Increasing just our likelihood of finding these nests is where you come in. So we're really excited to talk with you all about this and hopefully get you as excited as we are about bumblebee nests, because we want to find a lot of nests. That's why we want volunteers. We love going out there and doing this ourselves. But really getting more people out there is really going to help us see get a lot more data. We also are going to be using the information from what we're doing here to compare efficiency with radio tracking. So we have some funding to support the equipment for radio tracking. So this year we are going to be doing some radio tracking where we're able to follow individual bees back to the nest. And what we want to do is kind of compare the efficiency. So as you can see from the previous research here, it's all kind of, there's a lot of things happening pretty recently. So the research community is really interested in bumblebee nesting, but still kind of figuring out what's the best way to find them, what's the most efficient use of resources and time. And we've seen with a lot of other things in science in general, getting volunteer participants can really help to increase that efficiency of what we're doing. So getting to what this looks like to participate as a volunteer to help us find these nests and describe them, and then that leading to making better conservation recommendations for bumblebees. Where a lot of the commitment is just time, getting out there to spend time looking for nests. We're looking for people that have curiosity and excitement about nature and the outdoors. You will need either a cell phone or a tablet to record your data while you're out there. Transportation to get to sites where you would survey. Internet access to share your data with us. So the first step is attending a training, which you are doing now online here with us. We will also have some in-person training opportunities. So we do have one that's scheduled right now, but we will likely schedule others, especially as we find nests, so we can show you directly what's happening by these nests that you would look for. So the second step to participating is to choose your NestQuest site. So we are doing this just in sites that we are coordinating. So we don't have the option for you to pick your own site to do your questing in. So we have sites set up that are in Washington County in Lake Elmo Park Reserve, in Dakota County in Lebanon Hills Regional Park. And we also have several parks in Hennepin County. Those currently are only open to people who are currently Three Rivers Parks volunteers. And those sites are at Crow-Hassan Park Reserve and Highland Park Reserve. This is an example of what some of these sites look at. So we have these pink circles are representing, we are using the same size that Sammy Dolan was using in her research. We have these 1,500 meter square circles that are set up that you survey within. And so we have those set up at our research sites. So those maps are actually from last year. We still are getting them updated. We are going to, instead of 2 survey plots at each site, we're going to have 3 for people to choose from. For volunteers that are at Lake Elmo and Lebanon Hills, we'll be able to provide you with a parking permit. The step 3 for participating, after you decide where you want to go, is to plan your surveys. So you will choose a particular plot from those list of sites. We do have a sign-up sheet that we have, which is just basically a Google Sheet spreadsheet where we have survey dates and different times of day when you might be out there. So there are time slots. We have them kind of lumped into either early or late in the day, between 7 and 1 p.m. or 1 p.m. until basically dusk. We're looking for you to visit your site every other week for an hour as a minimum. You're welcome to visit your site more. We have this sign-up sheet mostly just so we don't have too many people descending on the same site at the same time, just so we can kind of divide things up. But you're welcome to go out any day of the week, any time within those time slots. If we do end up with, overlapping, people, if there's slots that you want to go to where you're overlapping, we can figure out, where you are within that time frame. We can divide things up finer if we need to. For when you're getting ready to go out to survey, you'll need to get your supplies together. So you'll need either a cell phone or a tablet to record data on. We do have volunteer badges that we'll share with you. So you don't have to, if anyone is questioning why you're walking off trail, you can show them your volunteer badge and let them know that you're with NestQuest and you're doing research with the University of Minnesota. Also, you will be walking off trail. So these sites where you'll be walking will be through prairie and forest, maybe savanna. So appropriate footwear and clothing is recommended for sun protection, for protection from from scratchy plants, from biting insects, all that kind of good stuff that will also be out there. So when you are going out for your nest quests, you'll be out there, every other week for an hour, starting from late June through late August. And it mentioned, approximately 5 visits over the summer. And when you're nest questing, it's really just a slow, meandering walk through your plot, looking for bumblebee nests. And we'll go over what the data recording looks like. But the main thing is walking slowly, keeping your eyes out, and we'll go more over, what you're keeping your eyes out for. But walking slowly, looking for bumblebees that are flying down into their nests. So here we have the signs of bumblebee nesting. So when you are by an active nest, you'll be able to see traffic in and out of the nest. Sometimes when you're close to a nest, you will hear buzzing. So it's good to have your not be walking around with headphones, have your ears are part of the survey too, to listen for what's going on around you. And you'll be a really distinctive thing to look for is for bumblebees doing circles near the nest entrance. And these are orientation flights. So we do have an example that will hopefully show up here. So hopefully you can see those bees as they're flying down there. I'll play that again, but you can see these large bees kind of in the middle of the screen that are doing this kind of toilet bowl swirl where they kind of are as they're going down into the grass, they're kind of swirling around, zooming in on where their nest is, and then disappearing down into the grass.
I put the link to that video in the chat too, in case anybody wants to watch that again.
All right. So I don't see any open questions in the Q&A, but we have a second here or a minute here to see if anyone has any questions so far. Oh, someone is in Duluth. We are hoping to eventually expand this program statewide. This is our second year. So we're sticking with our program of staying here, kind of closer to us in the Twin Cities. But yeah, we definitely encourage you to look in other parts. Um, and there are so there we'll go over, and in the NestQuest materials, you'll see there's good resources for what to do when you find a bumblebee nest. So even if you're not part of an official NestQuest, it's there with you can use Bumblebee Watch, which we can share a link for that. They have so Bumblebee Watch is a website that's taking information about bumblebees in general. So they just, if you find bumblebees on flowers and take pictures of them, you can share them on Bumblebee Watch. But there is kind of a separate way to enter it when you have an observation, to put in observations of nests. And if you do find a nest, you're able to share photos of the nest there. And also they ask for more detailed information about the nest. So if you do find a nest, noting things like what kind of materials you see around the nest, if you can tell what the nest is made of, what direction the nest entrance is facing, how many bees you see coming in and out of it per minute, all that kind of stuff can go into Bumblebee Watch.
Another question, do we meander or do more of a straight transect? We want you to be meandering through as much of that 15-meter square plot as you can. So kind of meandering back and forth from one side to another, rather than going in a straight line. Let's see. Oh, another question. How rare are rusty patch bumblebees? I'm in Grand Forks, North Dakota. Have lots of them in my perennial beds. So rusty patch bumblebees are pretty rare, and we mostly see them in the Twin Cities area. Their range does not extend super far north. There is another bumblebee, Bombus ternarius, which is the tricolored bumblebee that looks very, very similar to rusty patch bumblebee. It has the same umbrella shape on its thorax, and it also has red or orangish hair on its abdomen. And that is a super, super common bumblebee in northern Minnesota and into North Dakota. So it might be Bombus ternarius, or that tricolored bumblebee that you're seeing up in Grand Forks. I recommend, if you can get photos of the bumblebees you're seeing, either posting them to Bumblebee Watch or iNaturalist, so someone can go in and verify for you what bees you're seeing in your garden.
And I see a question there from Amanda about training pointers. So we have had other NestQuest volunteers that also have been interested in training their dogs. This isn't something that we do ourselves. And so, I mean, I know that the organizations that we've worked with are, one organization is called Conservation Dogs. And so, they are the ones that have been training dogs that have been happening around here. Sometimes we have nesting material that we can share for you to do your own training, but again, we know nothing about the training. But we sometimes do have the nest material that you would need. Paul is asking about scheduled times, 7 to 1 or 1 to 7, and then yeah, you would just pick a 1 hour in that time frame. And we just kind of broke that up to just that way to just make it so the spreadsheet wouldn't be too messy.
So I see Sarah is asking, if none of these sites work out, can you do the work at another location? So part of what we are doing with NestQuest is when nests are discovered, we are going out to those nest sites and doing these super detailed, in-depth habitat assessments, because we're really trying to understand if there are any associations between the surrounding habitat and where bumblebees are choosing to nest. So you are totally welcome to look for bumblebee nests, wherever you like, but those NestQuests outside of these 4 parks cannot officially be part of our program, since we are not able to go out to other sites to do those habitat assessments. All right.
Is June 22nd our?
Yes.
Yes. Someone in the Q&A, there are a couple of questions that we've answered in the Q&A. And one was someone asking about field training opportunities. So we do have one scheduled currently for June 22nd at Highland Park. We are kind of waiting to plan others, waiting to see the bumblebees are just still establishing their nests. It's the best way to have the field training is to have a site that has an active bumblebee nest and have volunteers go out and see if they can notice the nest. So first we need to find the nests. So we're waiting a little bit to see where we end up having nests, but we do have, it is helpful to just get together in person and go over some of the technology that Elise is going to talk about in a minute that we use to do that in person, and then to just look and see what the sites look like, look and see just what we mean by meandering around. So we will, regardless of there being a nest there or not, we may have one by then. We will meet on the 22nd just to go over things in person.
Another question about any nests being found at Lebanon Hills. Yes, Elaine will talk a little bit about what we found in 2024 in just a second. So we'll talk more about that nest there. Is it okay to have a human walking buddy to come along with you? Yes, definitely. You're totally welcome to bring other people with you on your nest quests, especially, if that makes you feel safer when you're out there in the field. That is definitely encouraged. Kathy, I don't think anyone has tried to invent a big microphone to pick up on bumblebee nest buzz. I did find a nest last summer just from the buzzing, so that is definitely a method, but you have to really be tuned into that noise.
And I do remember someone a long time ago talking about just BID for the sound, because they do make kind of different buzz sounds, but no one has followed that through to the sophistication of the Merlin app.
All right, for the sake of time, we should probably jump back into things. If other questions or things come up, feel free to pop them in the chat or Q&A, and we will get to those.
Right. So I'm going to go over some recap of what we did last year. So we had our first year last year, we had 11 volunteers that did 87.5 hours of nest searching. And we also had 5 staff members. So we were able to also go out. We did 108.75 hours of nest searching. So we had almost 200 hours of nest searching time. And we found 6 nests last year. They were all in prairies. So 5 of the nests were common eastern bumblebee nests. 1 nest was a brown-belted bumblebee nest. And we found 3 of these nests at Highland Park Reserve. One of these nests at Lebanon Hills, and we had 2 nests that were found at Crowhassan. So we have here's more information. The first nest we found was in mid-July. So we started looking similar to our plans this year. We started looking end of June, early July. It took a couple weeks before we found our first one, and we found nests through early August. So this matches with what we kind of expect from those bumblebee colonies getting bigger and then kind of doing their thing by late summer, those colonies kind of dwindling. One thing that we do when we find the nests is we do When we are able to, we go and excavate the nests. So we were able to do excavations of a few of these nests, and we do those just to get more information about the nest. We can learn, how deep the nests were, what kind of materials were in the nest. These were all underground nests that we had to do some digging to get to. We can also learn if there are pieces of the nest there still. We can look at how big the nest was. We can see what kind of pests were associated or anything like that. So there's a whole bunch of different things we can get from digging up the nest that we find. We take those pieces of the nest back to the lab and we dissect them. We are able to, pick all these pieces apart and learn about the structures of those individual nests. So right now we are going to take a little break, but you have a task to do on your break. So one of the things that I mentioned technology. So the reason why you need to have a phone or tablet with you is that there is an app that we are using for collecting information, and it is called Survey 123. So Elise is probably putting links in the chat. We are wanting you to download this onto your phone, either from the Apple App Store, if you have it on iPhone, or if you're on iPad, or Google Play Store for Android. And after you get the app, when you open it, sometimes it wants you to sign in to an Esri account. Esri is the company that does this app, but you should be able to just continue without signing in and be able to see the surveys. So that is your task over the next 5 minutes. Also, feel free to take a little bit of a break, and we will be back at, should we just say 6:25?
Yeah.
We'll have time to do, yeah, let's say 6:25, just so it's it's not an even number, that's an odd number, but
Round.
it fits in with our increments that we like to think of time in.
All right, we will see you all back here at 6:25 to dive into Survey 123. Welcome back, everyone. It's 6:25, so I think we'll go ahead and get started again. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how to use Survey 123. I hope you were all able to get it downloaded. If not, that is also okay. And we can, you can shoot us an email and we can help with the troubleshooting with that. Before we jump into Survey 123, we want to know how you heard about NestQuest. We had far more people sign up for this training than we had expected. Last year we had probably about between 20 and 30 people signed up, and we had 165 people signed up for our training this year. So we want to know more about how you learned about NestQuest. Because that gives us a better idea of what audiences we have reached, what audiences we haven't reached, and kind of where to go from there. All right, yeah, so I see lots of master naturalists and master gardeners, some folks on social media. See, Amanda said Facebook targeted post in my feed. Okay. This is super helpful to us. B-Lab newsletter.
The music video. Put that link.
We do have a NestQuest music video that we made to promote this program. For those of you that said other, if you want to leave a note in the chat, that would be super helpful as well. All right. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here. So the next little chunk of the last little bit of our presentation, we're going to be talking about data entry and how you're going to be collecting data for NestQuest. And that will primarily be done with Survey 123. We have 3 different forms for you. You primarily will just need number 1, which is our NestQuest survey form. So this is the one that is completed during your survey. So this includes your weather data, the plants that are blooming in the area, and then we also have this form set up to record your track. So it's recording where you're walking as you are surveying. So I'll go over how to do that as I go through that form. The second form is our nest discovery form. So this is a form that is completed only if you find a nest. So in there, you're recording information about the nest. You know, you're uploading some photos of the bees that you see, entering or exiting the nest, what direction the entrance is facing, how many entrances you see, those kind of things. And then our third form is an optional form for nest traffic. So once we have found a nest, another option that you have for NestQuest is to monitor some of the nests that we have found. So something else that we're really trying to understand, you know, is how big these nests are getting, how frequent the workers are entering and exiting, if they're bringing pollen back in with them. So we have another form for that, and that's just meant to be a place to enter the data that you record if you do some nest monitoring. So you're welcome to go ahead and scan the QR code here on the screen to follow along with me here. I'm also logged in on my phone, so I'm going to stop this share here and share from my phone and walk you through how to enter your data into Survey 123. All right, Elaine, can you see that okay?
Yes.
Okay.
It's still going ... but yeah, there it is.
All right, so here is our Survey 123. So you'll have the option to log in, but you should be able to click continue without signing in. So since I've already searched for these nests or for these surveys before, oops, hold on. Sorry about that. So since I've already searched for these surveys before, they show up under my Survey 123. But so there's also the option here to scan the QR code so that you can go ahead and
Now
scan.
we're seeing your keyboard.
That's the scan QR code
Oh, okay.
feature. So you can go ahead and scan the QR code, you know, that I showed before that I'll show again when I'm done walking through this. But that's how you can access the forms. So we can take a look here at the NestQuest survey. So it'll open this page that says NestQuest survey, recording data and track of 1 hour Bumblebee Nest survey. And then you can go ahead and click on collect. And this is where you will start entering your data. So the first thing we need to put in here is the site name. So let's say we are at Crowhasset. Then your start date of your survey. So if, you know, we have this set up super conveniently. So if you click start time, it will enter the date and the time for you. So that's all set. I am the primary observer. If you have another person out with you surveying, you can enter them in as your secondary observer. Then you can either enter in the weather information, so the temperature and the wind speed, before you start walking around in your survey plot, or you can wait until the end. See, it's probably, let's see, my computer says it's 62 degrees right now. It's let's say there's a light breeze, and then we're asking for you to enter in the air quality index as well. So this is accessible on airnow.gov. The air quality was really bad today. I'm gonna put in 200 just as a guess for that. So we don't actually know if air quality affects bees or not, but just we're trying to record this data just so we can kind of keep an eye on that, see if we notice any patterns. So once you have that temperature, wind speed, and air quality information entered in, then you can go ahead and begin your survey. So this is where you'll want to click on this little square button underneath where it says Survey Path, and this is how we start with tracking your survey, tracking where you are as you're meandering around. So it'll open up a map here. When you're actually out at your survey site, those pink circles that we showed on the map earlier should appear. And that's how, if you follow this little blue dot, the blue dot is you. That'll help you know if you're in the survey area or outside of the survey area. So once you open this map, you'll click this little sort of 2 lines that's in the bottom left-hand corner. And then that will start flashing. And then you're going to click the button that's right directly to the right of the one that's flashing, sort of this weird square shaped thing here. So now the one that's flashing is the one that we want. And then as you move around throughout your survey, it will track your location. And then when you finish, there will be a line that is created that showed where you were meandering. So you'll keep this going for your hour survey. Survey 123 really sucks up a lot of your phone battery life. If you do have a portable battery or a portable charger, I definitely recommend bringing that out with you or making sure you can plug your phone in when you get in the car, just as a field safety measure to make sure that you have your phone if you need it. So once you finish your survey, then you'll click the button that has a little check mark in the bottom right-hand corner. Oh, why is this not working? Of course, now we're having survey 123 difficulties. Well, you should be able to click the button in the bottom.
You didn't move.
Yeah, in the bottom right-hand corner, and that will record your track for you, and then you can go back. I'm guessing it's because I didn't move. After you finish your hour survey, you want to make sure to enter the end time. So we have that hour-long time recorded. And there are a few follow-up questions for you. So the first one is, how many times did you see bumblebees during your survey? Sometimes when you're out, you'll see a ton of bumblebees. Sometimes you'll only see a few. But if I was actually out surveying at this time of year, I would probably see less than 5. And then we want you to estimate how much of the survey area, so how much of that 1,500 meter square circle is covered by blooming flowers. So 0% would be nothing, you just see a lot of grass. 25% is there are some flowers available. 50% is that flowers are fairly abundant, and then 90% is that almost the entire survey area is covered with blooming flowers. One of the sites out at Lake Elmo that we had last year was probably pretty close to 90% almost the entire season. It was very, very densely covered with flowers. Then the last little bit of the Survey 123 form here is just to record the blooming plants that you're seeing in the area and the percent of area that's covered with that blooming plant. So maybe you see some bee balm blooming. So the scientific name for bee balm is Monarda fistulosa. If you know scientific names, that's great. If you don't, that's okay too. And that was covered, or our plot was about 50% covered by Monarda fistulosa. And another 25% of the survey area was covered by Culver's root.
That's a good site.
So you'll go ahead and enter in the plants that you see blooming. here. You know, if you don't fill in all of these boxes, that's totally okay. If there's more plants than there's space for, that's okay too. You know, just fill in what's available to you. And then once you complete that form, you can hit, oops, why is this? Check mark in the bottom corner. Then you'll be prompted with the option to either send your survey now, continue the survey. So if there's something you forgot to do, you can go back and change it or save it in your outbox. If you're in a spot where you don't have very good service, you can save it in the outbox and then submit the survey later. But if you do have service on your phone, hit send now. And that will send the form off, and we will be able to look at your data. The other form that I'm just going to really quickly go over is our nest discovery form. So this is the form to use if you do find a nest when you're out doing your nest quest. So if you find a nest, you know, you want to stop your 1 hour timer and spend some time sitting at the nest sites to make sure, first of all, that it is a nest, and then also get the information that we need here in this form. So again, we've got it. This is our nest discovery form used to document the location and habitat characteristics. So you'll again click collect. Then you'll enter in your site name. So we are still out at Crowhassan. We can say there's our date and time. I am our primary observer. And then you want to set the nest location. So this is set where it should just know where your location is, and you should just be able to hit the check mark. And that will document where you're at for your survey. So we are asking that you fill out this nest discovery form as well as upload this nest sighting to Bumblebee Watch. Elaine, do you want to put the Bumblebee Watch link in the chat? So Bumblebee Watch is only available online. There's not an app for it. So this is something that you will have to do when you go home. But the questions included in the nest discovery form and Bumblebee Watch are exactly the same. So we ask if you discovered this nest during your 1 hour survey time. There was one nest found last year as part of NestQuest that was found outside of a survey, so what we consider an incidental observation. So that's why you would say, why you might say no. Like say you found a nest when you were walking from your car or from your site back to your car. You know, that might be an incidental nest that you did not discover during your survey time. If you know what species of bumblebee you're seeing, let us know. So we've got the list here of bumblebee species. Then we want you to estimate how much traffic you're seeing at the nest. So are you seeing one or fewer bees enter or exit per every 5 minutes? Is it less than 1 bee per 1 minute? Are you seeing between 1 and 4 bees per minute, 5 to 10 bees per minute, or more than 10 bees per minute? Then we want you to tell us where the nest is located. So is it underground? Is it a small, a small hole where you can tell they're going underground? Is it just on the surface of the ground? Is it in some sort of other cavity like a tree? Is it in an artificial nest box? So some type of other nesting material or other. Then we want you to describe any additional details about the nesting site or the surrounding habitat that might be of interest. So maybe your nest is right in a big patch of bee balm, or maybe it's in a area with just some undisturbed soil. There's no plants around it. Recording those important details. We want you to record how many entrances you see being used, what direction the primary nest entrance faces, any obvious nest materials that you notice. So is the nest made of grass? Are there leaves in it? Do you see any rodent materials or bird nest materials? Those kind of things.
I just want to take, to interrupt you for a
Yes.
second. To let people know, I am putting the, people are wanting to look at that other form. I'm putting the link for the form into the chat.
Perfect. Thank you. We want to know how much of the day the nest that you found is getting sun. So if it's in a really sunny area, you know, where there's nothing around it that could create shade, or if it might get shade for part of the day, as well as how much shade area sort of the nest has. If you know what kind of soil is around the nest, let us know as well. Also totally okay if you're not sure what type of soil you've got. Then we want you to upload some photos. So a few photos within 3 feet of the nest. So maybe if you walk in a circle, you know, within sort of a 3-foot radius, uploading a few different photos of that nest entrance, as well as a photo from farther away, so 20 feet away. That can kind of help us orient to where the nest is at. We will be providing you with flags where you can mark the nests as you find them, but these photos are helpful as well. And then photos of the resident bees if possible, because this can help us identify what species you're seeing. So once you've included all of that information, you can then hit the little check mark in the bottom corner. And then again, send now if you're in a place where you've got good service, or you can save it in your outbox if you're not able to get it to send. So that is kind of our overview of you using Survey 123. I know that was pretty kind of quick information to go through.
And just to explain a little bit, so with the survey one, or the one that we're using when you're going out and doing your surveys where we're getting your track, that is one where sometimes it can be goofy and it won't, you know, some people can't get it to record their track. We are trying to get that information just to be able to really look at what areas were covered, to get an idea of how much time people are spending in different areas of the survey plot. But the main thing is that you're getting out there and looking for nests. So if that ends up being a struggle and it, you know, just doesn't work out, or you can tell that it's being goofy, or it, you know, makes your phone die, the main thing is that we want you out there doing the surveys and, you know, recording some information about when you're out and those other things. And if the track doesn't work or is goofy sometimes, keep doing your survey. And we're, you know, the main thing is that you're out there and looking.
I guess I was just typing a response to Gretchen's question. So Gretchen asked, is Nest Discovery only on the web, or can we do that through the app? So the Nest Discovery form that I just went over, that is available through the Survey 123 app. So that's the link that Elaine just put in the chat. But we're also asking you to upload your observations to Bumblebee Watch. So Bumblebee Watch is a separate website, and that is the one that is available only on the web.
Yeah, so we have a few, you know, a few different of these things in, you know, in Survey 123. You know, so we have 3 separate forms. We have the Nest Quest survey form, which is the one where we're recording the tracks, the Nest Discovery form, which is for when you find a nest, and then we also have the nest traffic form.
I put the link in the chat to the NestQuest website where you can access the links and QR codes to all of those different forms. I know some of our volunteers last year had some difficulty and confusion about using Survey 123. Like Elaine said, we don't want this to be a barrier to you or a reason that you're not surveying. So if you are having issues with it recording your track, do your survey anyway. Enter as much of the data in that form as you can. And if you're really having difficulties, reach out to us. If there are ways we can provide better training materials to you all for using these forms, please let us know. We want to make sure that you're all able to record data in a way that's not too difficult. All right. I'm going to jump back into things here.
Do you want me to stop sharing?
Yes. All right, so I just went over that nest discovery form, but just kind of here's a quick breakdown, of what to do if you discover a nest. So collecting your coordinates of your nest location and marking the area at the nest with flags. So we will provide you with flags as well as that volunteer lanyard. Getting photographs of the nest site as well as the nest occupants is super important, as well as collecting that additional data. So you'll fill out that nest discovery form, enter your observation into Bumblebee Watch. But another thing that is super helpful to us, if you are out on a survey, please send us an email. Please let us know right away that you found a nest, because then we can prioritize getting out to that site to see where your nest is, make sure we can identify who's in there, and do our habitat assessments. So here is Bumblebee Watch. I'm just going to go through this super quickly. So Bumblebee Watch is available on the web. You have to create an account, but when you find a nest, you'll go to add Bumblebee sightings on the left, then select Bumblebee Watch to submit sightings. You can choose a location. So I'm just going to pick one that I already did, or, this is just a practice. And then you will have the option after you've created that observation to add a nest. So here you'll enter in some photos, information on what species it is, if you know how much traffic you were observing at the nest. So very similar questions to what we ask in our Survey 123 form. Incidental nest observations, just want to touch on this really quickly. So these are nests you discover outside of your 1-hour survey time. So maybe on your walk back from your survey to your car, you find a nest. So we want you to follow the same protocols that you would if you discovered a nest during the survey. So you're collecting your coordinates, taking photos, filling out that nest discovery form, and uploading the nest to Bumblebee Watch. We also have the option for you to monitor nests that we discover. So these are nests that either our staff team or other volunteers find. So this can happen either before or after a NestQuest survey. So these are 20-minute observations where you are literally just sitting at the nest and observing bees entering and exiting. So we have a paper data sheet for you for this one. So you're entering in, what the site is, some of the sort of weather conditions, and then you will record when you see a bee enter or exit, as well as if she had any pollen with her. Our Survey 123 form is sort of more of a data entry place here. You don't need to have Survey 123 going while you're recording or while you're doing your nest traffic survey. And this is optional, if you really are excited about NestQuest, if you want to spend more time at the active Bumblebee nests, you can definitely do these 20-minute optional nest traffic surveys. All right, we've got about 10 minutes left here, so I'm going to kind of breeze through the field safety here. There's more information about field safety on our website. But before you go out into the field, it's really important that you kind of know these safety basics. So one of the first and most important things is be sure to tell somebody where you're going and when you expect to return. So while all four of our sites are county parks, where they're not too rural, they're not super remote. When you are going out by yourself, it's important to let somebody know where you're going and when you expect to be back, so they know if they need to look for you. It's great to bring a travel size first aid kit with you. So having Band-Aids, alcohol wipes, those kind of things with you just in case of any emergencies. Being aware of field risks, so ticks, heat exhaustion, poison ivy, etc. To kind of protect yourself against ticks, we definitely recommend, tucking your pants into your socks, using bug spray, those kind of preventative measures, checking yourself for ticks when you get home. Heat exhaustion, it was really hot on Monday, making sure you're drinking enough water, taking breaks if you need to, not going out on hotter days if that's more of a challenge for you. Knowing what poison ivy looks like, Crowhassan has a lot of poison ivy. There is some poison ivy sort of in the edges of our plots out at Crowhassan. So just being aware of what that looks like. If you do find poison ivy, this is another great reason to tuck your pants into your socks. So if you do encounter poison ivy, it just gets on your clothes rather than your skin. But if you do encounter poison ivy, make sure you get your clothes in the wash and try and shower the poison ivy off of yourself as quick as you can. The most important thing is that if you feel unsafe at any time during your survey, it is absolutely okay to leave without finishing. Your safety is the biggest priority here. We want to get data on bumblebee nests, but if you feel unsafe, your safety is far more important than finding a nest or finishing your survey. Just to touch on kind of safety near active nest sites. So bumblebees are generally very docile, but they may be a little bit more defensive at their nests. That's their home. They've got their sisters and their queen in there that they want to protect. So this is, something to sort of just be aware of if you do find a nest or if you do that nest monitoring. So, generally staying calm if you find a nest. Observing the nest from a safe distance. What did we decide a safe distance was last season?
Usually even just, like 5 feet.
Yeah, a few feet from the nest entrance is generally a safe distance. Don't disturb any of the features around the nest. So not pulling out any grass, poking at the soil, those kind of things. If the bees do appear agitated, leave the nest site, so turn around, walk away. You don't need to finish a nest monitoring survey, especially if the bees appear agitated. Sometimes when, they're flying out of their nest, they tend to sort of circle around, and they might circle around sort of around your face, and that can feel a little bit scary. That's not super common or likely, but we just want you all to be aware that that is something that could happen. We did lots of nest monitoring last year, and this was not something that we experienced at any point in time. If we were sitting at that safe distance, the bees really didn't care about us being there. Carrying some sort of non-drowsy antihistamine with you in the unlikely event of getting stung is always a good idea. So what's new for NestQuest in 2025? So more questing, we've got 3 plots at each site instead of just 2. We're hoping to have more volunteers this year and hopefully find more nests. And then our staff team is also going to be doing some radio tracking. So Elaine and I went out on Friday last week to get started on radio tracking. So that bee in the middle is a little brown belted bumblebee queen that we put a ultralight battery powered radio tag that we glued onto the thorax of the bumblebee. And then we use these handheld antennas that connect to our phone, create sort of dots on a map so we're able to follow where the bee is going. We went back yesterday and we were able to detect that tag again, so that bee is still flying around. Part of why we're trying to do this radio tracking is to see what's the most effective way to find bumblebee nests. You know, is a lot of people out there on the landscape effective, or is using the radio tracking equipment more effective? And then what's also what's more cost effective? You know, radio tracking equipment is really expensive, but if it's really effective at finding nests, is that something that's worth pursuing more? So we're really excited to do the radio tracking. I was feeling nervous about it, but since it went really well last week, I'm excited to kind of see where that goes for the rest of the season. And we're hoping to schedule kind of a demo day. So, well, we don't have, our volunteers can't help us out with the radio tracking. We want you all to be able to kind of see what that looks like. So our next steps for you, attend one of our optional in-person trainings. So we have a training scheduled for June 22nd at Highland Park Reserve. Complete our volunteer liability form. So this, you know, is just saying that you've completed training, you understand what the expectations are as a volunteer. Decide where you'd like to survey and then sign up for your surveys. Since, you know, bumblebees, if we think back to that life cycle, are still kind of in that early summer phase, we recommend that you wait until after June 20th to really get started with your nest questing. So here's just our upcoming event, June 22nd, 11 to 12:30 at Highland Park Reserve. We'll meet at Richardson Nature Center and then head out together. Hopefully we'll have found a nest by June 22nd, but if not, this will just be an opportunity to kind of answer any questions and practice those field methods all together. So we are just about at time here. I was hoping we'd have a little bit more time for questions. So folks have to sign off, you know, that's okay. We don't want to take advantage of your time, but we're happy to stick around for a few more minutes to answer some more questions. I just want to say thank you all so much for joining us tonight. I'm feeling really excited about this season of NestQuest. And you know, that we have so many of you that are also excited. I will drop my email in the chat as well, you know, so like I said, we'll stick around for a few more minutes here, but if you think of something later and want to reach out to Elaine or I, we are happy to answer any other questions you might
and
have.
there's a lot of great questions that were in the Q&A section too, which I think we can retrieve out of Zoom. And we're constructing a kind of we can put them onto FAQ kind of thing, website, and share them.
Yep. Laura asked, if you cannot attend the training on the 22nd, can you still participate? Yes. So the in-person trainings are sort of meant to be an optional opportunity to learn more. You know, this training should cover everything you need to know to participate in NestQuest, and those in-person trainings are just to add a little bit more for you. But yeah, you don't need to attend that in order to participate.
And we'll likely plan another kind of a check-in online too for those who aren't able to attend an in-person thing. So we'll just kind of let the season get started a little bit, and we'll plan another thing just to give an opportunity for people to ask questions.
Yeah.
Directly. But you know, feel free to email us at any time as well.
Yes. There's a question in the Q&A. Is there a July or August calendar for sign up in addition to June? Not yet. There will be. Just haven't gotten around to making one for July and August just yet. But yeah, you can expect that to show up in the next couple of weeks. Where the volunteer form says Three Rivers Park volunteers only. Does that mean as a new volunteer, I can only sign up for the other ones? Yes. So Crowhassan and Highland Park Reserves, those are part of the Three Rivers Park District. Three Rivers has their own organization of volunteers. So if you are a Three Rivers Parks volunteer, you can survey at Crowhassan or Highland. But if you are not a Three Rivers Parks volunteer, you will have to survey at either Lake Elmo or Lebanon Hills, which are also equally as wonderful and fantastic. Oh, yes, I can put my email in here again.
I'll put mine. Right, thank you so much for your interest. We're really excited for this year. I personally think this is one of the more fun, relaxing experiences. The actual questing is just
Yes.
very meditative and very enjoyable.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so we recorded this training, so this will be posted to our NestQuest website within the next week or so, for you to review or share with your friends. All right, thank you all so much for joining us. Have a great rest of your evening, and reach out if you have any questions.
Good night.